Hello everyone, welcome to another Project Drops. Today we're going to be talking about project risks, assumptions, and issues. But before we start, let me invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. On the next webinars, we're going to be posting a question on the YouTube channel on the comments of the webinar. And you can answer that question. Everyone who answers the question will have a chance to get a free DPRO exam. Even if you cannot watch the live webinar, the question will remain open for 24 hours. So you can watch the recording, answer the questions within 24 hours, and then you can get a project, program, finance, or MILD Pro free exam. But let's jump into it. Let's talk about the differences and similarities of project risks, assumptions, and issues. We will also see some examples of each one of those. Risk is the potential effect of uncertainty on project activities, outputs, and outcomes. You can see that effect is highlighted because risk is not just the event. It's what that event will make, how it will affect our project and our activity. It's something that might happen. It's not certain that it's going to happen. It impacts the task or the whole project. And it can be avoided, can be mitigated. You can reduce the probability or the impact of that risk on your activity or your project. What if this happens? So we always think, what if that happens? And what would that make, or what would that impact, or how that would impact my project or my activity? Let's see a few examples. An instructor might face traffic jams and arrive late. Well, that's the event. The risk is the instructor might face traffic jams, arriving late, and delaying the start of the course. You see that on the risk, we always add or always include what is the impact of that risk on your activity or your project. And you can mitigate that risk. The instructor can wake up a little bit earlier, can take an alternative route, or can even set up the course to start 1 hour later to avoid the rush hour and to avoid getting late for the course. Let's see another example. Heavy rain might cause internet instability and power cuts. So again, this is the event. The risk is heavy rain might cause internet instability and power cuts, canceling the scheduled online meeting. You can have some mitigation plans, like you can have a phone to use on the conference in the event of the internet's not working. You can move the date, since you know that in the date of that conference or in the date of that meeting we're gonna have a storm. Or you can set up an assumption with a confirmation for that meeting 1 hour before it starts. We will talk about assumptions in a minute, and you'll see how that could be an assumption that would change the way I'm going to do that activity. Assumptions there are hypotheses about necessary conditions, something that must remain true, something that must happen, something that my project needs to happen in order to be successful. Usually it's positively phrased, so we use a positive wording. It is sometimes out of our control, and risks might create assumptions, like we just saw in the example, and assumptions might also be treated as a risk with mitigation plans, with response plans. The catchphrase for assumptions is, we need this to happen. My project needs that thing to happen or to maintain or to continue in order to be successful. Let's get that example that we saw on risk. So heavy rain might cause internet instability and power cuts, canceling the scheduled online meeting. If we cannot use the phone, if we cannot move the date, we might set up an assumption that says internet and power will be available and remain stable. In the event that that assumption does not maintain, does not sustain, then that activity will be canceled. In this case, the activity or the project or the task will be canceled because the assumption did not maintain as we anticipated. The new government after elections will continue to prioritize in funding children protection projects. Let's say that the government changed. After elections, we do not have the funding, so the project will be completely canceled or affected or reduced. So it is an assumption that it's not on our governance. It's something that's out of our control. You can't control the results of the elections. And you need that to continue in order to assure to secure the funding for the project that you have. Another example, the exchange rate. Let's get the example of Brazilian reais versus US dollars. The exchange rate will remain stable, fluctuating no more than 10% up or down. So if there is a fluctuation in the exchange rate and you're receiving the funding for your project from overseas, maybe the funding you receive will not be enough to cover the budget because it is going to be less than you expected in your local currency. And you have to monitor the exchange rate. And of course, you have to discuss that assumption or all assumptions you have in your project with your donor to explain that what if something happens with the exchange rate that is above 10% up or down, if it change more than 10%, the project will be affected and need to be redesigned, need to be reviewed. Well, finally, but not less important, let's talk about issues. Issue is a problem, of course, an unresolved situation. It might be a risk that is happening, or might be an assumption that is not holding, or it can also be unforeseen situations. Maybe you didn't expect that issue. You were not able to identify that as a risk or assumption before, and something just suddenly happened. And the catchphrase for that, the way you can remember issues is just, oops. Well, of course, if you had foreseen the issue as a risk or as an assumption, the phrase could be, oh, it's happening, or oh, it's not happening. Thinking about the instruction being late, and all students are waiting for him. Or thinking about internet or power is down and cannot start the meeting. Thinking about the new government changed their priorities and funds have been cut. So those are all the risks we saw before and assumptions that we saw before that are now becoming true, are happening or not maintaining in case of the assumptions. The exchange rate is now over 10% and funds in local currency are not enough for you to continue with your project. But as I said, an issue could be something that is not expected, something unforeseen. And if that happens, if an issue happens and you're not expecting, you don't have a response plan for it, you solve the issue, you fix that problem, and then you have to work with your team to analyze if it's worth to include that issue on your risk plan, on your risk register, or in your assumptions. Let's try to summarize by thinking about a figurative example. The task is, I have to go to work by bus and arrive at 8 a.m. every day. We have an assumption that the public transportation is working normally. I do not have any control on public transportation. So that's an assumption that the public transportation is working and running normally. As a response plan, see, it's an assumption, but I can discuss that with my donor, in this case, my boss. And in case of a bus driver's strike, my boss can pre-authorize me to take a cab. So in the event that that assumption does not maintain, is not sustained, I will take a cab because I'm pre-authorized for that. I might have an issue that a bus has a flat tire. We're not expecting that. Or the driver has a heart attack or anything else that I was not expecting. Again, if I have discussed with my boss, with my manager, that possibility of any assumptions or even issues that we not anticipated, I can take a cab. I will be pre-authorized to use some of the resources that I have to take a cab. I might also have a risk of a traffic. The bus can get a traffic jam and the travel duration will be longer, so I would arrive late. I can mitigate that because I can anticipate that traffic jams might happen between 7 and 8 o'clock in the morning. So you know what? I'm going to wake up a little bit early and take an earlier bus. So in that case, I'm mitigating the chances of getting late because I'm waking up early and departing from my home earlier to get earlier at my work. So it's a way to mitigate. It's not 100% secure. Maybe the traffic jam keeps the bus stopped for 2 hours and I will be late. But at least I reduce the chances, the probability of getting late in the event that there is a traffic jam. Treating risks may create a residual risk. So if I wake up early and take a course, if I take a cab, for example, in the case of assumption issues, I might arrive too early at my work. And I might want to have a response plan For example, to bring a book and to use that extra time that I have before 8 a.m. to read the book. Same thing would happen in our projects. If you have an activity and you treat the risk, the potential risk for that activity, you might end up with another potential problem, another risk in your hands. If the instructor arrives too early for the class, maybe the class is going to be closed. And what if it's a dangerous place? What should that instructor do between the time he arrives or she arrives and the start of the course? So always when you design your response plan for a risk, think about what is the residual risk. What would happen if you put that response plan in place, if you execute that response plan? To remember, risk is something that I have to always think, what if that happens? Assumptions, we need this to happen. We need that to maintain so my project, my activity will be successful. An issue like, oops, or it's not happening, it's happening, depending if it's an issue or a risk. Well, thank you for watching another Project Drops. On the next webinars, we might talk about what could be the response plan for risks and how we can treat assumptions. I would like to remind you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And remember, on the next webinars, we will have a question posted at the YouTube channel that gives you a chance, if you answer the question, subscribe to the YouTube channel, to get a free DPRO exam. So if you're watching this webinar on Facebook, LinkedIn, or any other platform, remember to visit our YouTube channel, and we see you again on our next Project Drops.